people don't need complicated incentive plans. They don't need bonuses. They're not going to put their hand out when you tell them they're winning. Yeah. They just want to know that they're winning. Right. James Jessop, thanks for being on here. How's it going today?
It's going good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. So first of all, what kind of work do you do and where are you located?
We're located in Washington County. So we are in the Hurricane, St. George, and Washington City area, Ivins, Santa Clara area. And most of the time, our business mostly stacks rock walls and then does the smaller final grades and little power trenches, little plumbing trenches. This year, we've gotten a little more into the full land development and kind of moving into that sector now.
Got it. And what's the name of your business?
Creative Excavating.
Creative Excavating. Gotcha. And how many employees do you have?
Right now, we have 25. Boy, it's hard to keep track. We've done a lot of hiring lately.
Gotcha. So let's talk about this. What kind of problems or challenges were you having that led you to sign up for Busybusy? And what did that frustration feel like?
I would say the biggest frustration was just getting information from the field to the office. And that's time, obviously time cards. Fridays were always an absolute nightmare where, you know, we've got to have it in for payroll, but then also for billing as well. But just to even get their payroll out, I can't tell you how many times I would see people in the parking lot for 30 minutes filling out the whole week's time sheets. I've been there. I mean, I worked for a company as well, and that we did paper time cards. So I knew exactly what they were doing. They were trying to remember what in the world they did on Monday, Tuesday, and they're trying to figure out how to write enough details that it seems like it made sense to the office. And that was all on Friday.
And when you said it was a nightmare, what did that look like? Tell us specifically what that means.
It would make you, as a guy trying to be organized, as a guy trying to get that information, you were frustrated. The employees a lot of times for doing that, even great employees that were very productive out on site. And I mean, they were some of your best employees in a rock wall industry. Some of your highest paid, best employees are kind of an artistic kind of employee that is putting a puzzle together all day, every day. Those type of personalities generally they're not the most organized on the paperwork end of it. They've got that artistic personality. And so you'd be really frustrated with one of your top guys, your top producers, over just having paperwork turned in before Friday. So then what that would equal out, then what it'd do is I basically got to work all weekend because I couldn't have them in on Monday and Tuesday. You're texting them and calling them to get them in all through the week. And of course, they'd try and get it in on Friday because that had to do with their paycheck. But it also, for billing, I ended up doing a lot of my billing on Saturday and Sunday just because that's when I finally got the information to do that.
Mm-hmm. And sounds like some of the ripple effects you were dealing with were being frustrated at people, took up your weekends, or as you said, you got to work on
right
doing your billing. Like, hey, thanks, guys. What were some of the other ripple effects that you were dealing with because you didn't have good timesheet information?
You know, because customers wouldn't get their bills right when the project was done. It's funny what a time lapse will do on the memory of what a customer might owe you versus what the bill says. And you know what? Maybe sometimes it was a lack of good information and they were improperly billed. But for the most part, I mean, if you can get a bill out the day you're pulling off the job, it's fresh on the customer's mind. There's less negotiation on whether or not we need to trim this bill down or not. I mean, it's really new and the customers watched you pull off. Generally, they're really happy and excited to pay that bill because they've seen just what you've done. That was a big one on what would having that timekeeping and that information to the office immediately.
Yeah. And it might be tough to know this, but do you feel like you were overpaying some employees because they were guessing at their timesheets?
Oh, absolutely. Oh yeah. Yeah. It's really been kind of a funny thing to see accurate on the project timekeeping and the production we see versus what those old paper timesheets were. Just to get that they needed to get their 8 to 10 hours, so they looked like that regardless. And it's amazing how many 7 hours and 45 minuters there are, or just that much more production. If they're acting those 8 to 10 hours.
I'm curious. 10 years ago, I ran a company and I implemented a timesheet tracking system and dealt with a lot of the problems. Tuesdays were nightmare days for us. That was payroll days.
Right.
And so I'm curious. One of the things that I struggled with was, all right, how do you deal with breaks and lunch? I actually, one of the craziest questions I ever got from a guy was, all right, so when I clock out for lunch, it's for lunch, right? So I'm going to stay on the clock when I drive to the restaurant. I'm going to clock out when I get there, and then I'm going to clock back in when I get in my truck to drive back to the job site, right? I'm like, that's crazy. Where would you ever get that idea? So I'm curious, how do you handle lunch and breaks? Like, is there a set policy where everybody takes a lunch every day? Is it more flexible? I'm just curious how you handle that.
I've asked the guys, I think it's important for guys to take a break in the middle of the day at some point. It's generally from 11 to 12, but I do ask them to take that break because the work they're doing, they're constantly staring at these rocks, trying to get them to fit into this puzzle all day. Your eyes need a break, your mind needs a break, and I think it helps the production. But that being said, we do require, hey, you need to take your break when that machine stops as you're leaving the project. A lot of times, and the reason I say that is a lot of times they'll be pulled into a parking lot, handle a few personal phone calls that have been on their mind, and then run in and grab lunch, and then get back to the project. The phone calls in the parking lot might be longer than grabbing lunch, but it's still a break away from that project. So that's what we're asking them to do. Clock in when they leave or clock out when they leave and clock in when they get back.
Yeah. Yeah. I think just having clarity on that process, whatever it is, just be clear. That seems to be the best advice. Just tell people what the expectations are, so there's no misunderstanding. Yeah. So let's go back to when you had been using Busybusy for a while. Talk about the moment you realized that Busybusy was working for you to make those problems go away.
So the first day or week? Well, about the time you got your first payroll's worth of time cards, that really was like an aha moment. Like, wow, I'm happier with my guys. They're not getting my phone calls on Friday while they're trying to get out of town or do whatever they're going to do with their families. I could just do payroll. I could get my billing done actually throughout the week is when I started to realize it. And another big one was as we transitioned from bringing in a secretary that wasn't as familiar with out in the field work, for her to be able to pull up these pictures. Busybusy, when they implemented the pictures on those time cards, where she could actually see what was accomplished and kind of wrap her head around what they're doing out there, that was a huge barrier to bringing on somebody for this type of business. Because it's not just, hey, you run square footage on a house and there's this much square footage of framing. Dirt work's always different. There's every job is different. And so for the secretary to understand what was going out in the field and know how to put a description on the bill that made sense to the customer was a really big deal.
Yeah, that's interesting about pictures. That's one of the best ways to describe what's going on out in the field. So it sounds like it's had a pretty profound impact on your time and helping your team out. Has it affected your customers, or your customers getting any benefit or value out of Busybusy, or is it kind of behind the scenes?
On the T&M jobs, a big majority of our business is just square foot rock walls. But when we go into the time and materials, doing backfills, digging in utilities and different things like that, where I can just punch out a time card report of what they're paying and show them that it is GPS stamped on the job, like it, so it's verified time. That's been a big benefit, I guess, for us in collecting that bill, but also for the customer in feeling like he's really getting what he paid for. And, there's not that fluff time.
Yeah. Yeah. What would you say is your favorite thing about Busybusy?
Time savings. It saves hours and hours and hours of more of the frustrated time, which is just the gathering information, getting it to the office. To have that instant has just been a game changer for our business. Going back to the pictures, liability. We did have a guy, we put up a concrete block wall, very, very sturdy block wall. Had a guy come in and dig out behind the block wall and install a pool. And there's GeoGrid you put behind the rock wall or block wall. And they ripped all that out, broke a water line back there, shoved a rag in the water line. Anyway, it ended up ultimately, that wall failed. It did fall over. But because of all the pictures of the layers of GeoGrid, the way it was installed, we ultimately, just out of pride of being business, we worked with that guy and we actually put it up on ourselves. But when it came down to, hey, you're going to replace our whole backyard and everything there, we showed him the pictures and the argument was dropped. It turned in from a, hey, we could get into pretty nasty litigation to, hey, we just appreciate you guys doing what you did. And we appreciate you guys being the company that you are. Because of those pictures.
Yeah. Yeah. He or she who has the best documentation wins. It's amazing what a couple of pictures will do, how it takes all the air out of a balloon, that takes all the air out of a fight. And yeah, that's interesting. It went from, hey, we're going to litigate to, oh, can you help us out? Yeah.
Right. It absolutely turned into, we'll do this for good reviews, for good word on the street. And it's a small town. Word gets around. So sometimes you do it just for the reputation, whether it's your issue or not.
Yeah. Yeah. So how is life or business different now since you've been using Busybusy?
I have my weekends back. That's a biggie. Yeah. And where we've grown as much as we have, I spend most of my time now in the office and behind the scenes. Have a supervisor out now running the crews, and it gives me a lot more just clarity and visibility on the entire company in general. If there are issues of time fluffing, they're picked out right away. On the other side, if we're seeing high production from a particular employee that maybe even started as a laborer, but he's just that type of an employee that really grows quick and wants to understand, is ambitious, it immediately helps that guy stand out, so that you're giving the right guys key positions, the right guys raises, the right, and really incentivizing the right guys you want in place there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Some people feel like they're probably in a situation where you were and where I was before putting a system like this in place, but they're thinking, if I do this, my guys are going to feel like it's Big Brother looking over their shoulder. It's going to feel like micromanagement. What would you say to those people who are dealing with the problems you were, but are reluctant to pull the trigger because they're concerned about how their team will feel about it?
I found with that the guys that don't want you to see where they're clocking in are generally the guys that have been fluffing their time. For the most part, guys that are just wanting to go to work, earn a honest paycheck and do the work, show up when they want when they're getting paid. They really don't have a big problem with it. I really haven't had anybody that is really honest about their time have any issue with it. It's oh, you can see me? And I say, yeah, and we'll show them where it stamps them. And generally it's like, oh, that's pretty cool that they can do that. The guys that fluff it are most of the time the guys that really have an issue with that.
Yeah, that's what I found. Your top performers, they like accountability. They like a culture of accountability. And yeah, the guys who are like, well, I'm showing up 15 minutes late. I'm clocking in on the drive in. I'm clocking out when I get to the restaurant. The people who have a problem with accountability, there's a reason that they have a problem with that. And the other thing I've found is, like, if you have some of that going on, if you have that time fluffing going on, your top performers know it.
Oh, they do. And they do. They're watching it more than you are.
Yeah. And they're like, why the hell are they letting this go on? And why am I over here busting my ass, giving a solid 8 hours or 10 hours a day? And these other guys are fluffing their time and not being held accountable. So it's all good. All good things happen when you put that accountability in place. Yeah, good stuff. All right, James. Well, man, I appreciate you taking some time out of your busy day. One last question for you. It sounds like you've grown quite a bit in the recent years. How do you feel that Busybusy has impacted your ability to grow?
I'll give you a little comparison. Before 2005, we grew to this same size on no time cards or without a system like this. And it was just chaos. It was felt like you were barely floating above water, just trying to manage the information, trying to do the best you could, but you knew you were just, it's that thought in the back of your head. I know I'm losing thousands and I don't know where, but hey, the bank account's good today. Hopefully it's good tomorrow, but it's a lot of hope. And with this system, we've grown to this same size, and it's, oh my gosh, the stress is a tenth of what it is. I know where the jobs are. I know what the production is. I know the liability. I mean, that we're covered there. As far as just a peace of mind, it's not even a comparison. I think that's probably the biggest thing Busybusy's done, is it's kind of got me off the hamster wheel of just collecting data, and then given me just a much better peace of mind of where we're at.
Yep. Yeah. Confidence, clarity, peace of mind. That's what I'm hearing you say. Yeah.
Yep.
Great stuff. Well, I appreciate it, James. Hopefully this will motivate some folks who might be on the fence, or maybe they're not even thinking, oh man, I never even thought about this stuff. I think it'll motivate them to take a look at it. So great stuff. Keep up the good work. And thanks for coming on here.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm here with Ben Ercanbrack. So Ben, what kind of work do you do and where are you located?
So I do construction. It is brick, stone, stucco, primarily block masonry. We do natural stone, manufactured stone, all different sizes and types of brick. I've got location primarily in Salt Lake and Utah County in Utah. So we work anywhere from, say, Payson, Utah, north to Salt Lake, east to Park City. So we do quite a bit up in Park City area.
Gotcha. And how many employees do you have?
So I've got 2 or 3 companies. We separate it by masonry and stucco and such. Between the 2 companies, roughly, I think right around 65, 70.
Gotcha. So we're going to talk about Busybusy, the time tracking software. But let's start with this. What problems were you having that led you to sign up for Busybusy? And then what did that frustration feel like?
Well, running numerous employees, you have the issues of getting time in the right times, meaning so that you can do payroll. If payroll's on a Monday, for example, for us, I was getting, texts and phone calls and dropped off papers and notes to my office, to my house, on my truck for, oh, here's my hours, right? A phone call, oh, hey, sorry, I forgot to tell you, I worked this day too. All sorts of different issues like that, wherein collecting the hours was an issue for sure. The other part of it was, are the hours actually accurate? I used to work with my father and doing construction, same thing. And, kind of grew up going to work, and it'd be like, okay, yeah, you clocked in at 7. You really didn't clock, just showed up. Maybe it was 6:55, maybe it was 7:05, but it was still 7 o'clock on the timesheet. And then, you had a half-hour lunch, but sometimes it was 20 minutes, sometimes it was 40 minutes. You didn't really know the 8-hour day, but was it really 30 or was it 3:40 or 3:15? Personally, was thinking of, I wish there was an app that did this. I wish I could find this. I wish, I'm a very detail-oriented guy. I like to job cost. I like to be specific on my timing, my hours, my job costing, my materials, all of the above, because I want to know where I'm at. And, there's a lot of people out there that think, close enough. Yeah, I think I made money. Yeah, I did good. Or, you get a check in the mail and you get $20,000. You're like, sweet, I'm rich. Oh, wait, I got to pay payroll. It's only 10 grand. Cool. I got 10 grand. I'm good. So people don't fully know where they really are at. And I was trying to find something that could help me do that. And there was a payroll company that I had heard of joining and possibly working with them. And through them, I got a little help and heard of Busybusy, and basically here we are now. So I took the bull by the horns, contacted Busybusy, went direct to them and got talking with them, and I can see what their hours are. They clocked in at 6:55 and 32 seconds, so on and so on. So it became very technical on their timing. Make sure you get paid for everything you do, 100% of what you do. No more, no less. Want to make sure you're compensated for everything you do fairly and honestly, but there's no extra, 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there because you didn't do that.
Yeah. So it sounds like collecting time was kind of a nightmare, and I've been there. I ran a company. We had 15 or 20 employees, grew it up to 50 employees, and getting timesheets was crazy. Texts, phone calls, emails. But what, for me, there were 2 really bad days. The day that all the time was due, and then payday was crazy because checks were wrong.
Correct.
Was that the case for you as well? Like, was payday kind of chaotic?
Payday was always chaotic. Really, for what we were talking about earlier, where I said I get text message or a phone call the day of, oh, hey, I forgot to tell you about these hours, right? And inevitably, there was always someone who had to come and say their check was wrong and I was trying to write another check.
Yeah.
And that was always frustrating for me because you go through the stress of doing it all to then kind of get punched in the gut like, ugh, now I got that too. And so at the time, I think I had 25, 30 guys. So it was still a lot to handle. I don't even know what I'd be doing with 60, 65 guys trying to figure out paper turn in reports and so on and so forth.
Yeah. So how long have you been using Busybusy now?
I think it was 2013 or 2014 that I started.
Gotcha.
So it's been evolving quite a bit.
Yeah. So take us to the moment, maybe it's been a while, but take us to the moment when you realized Busybusy was working for you to solve some of those problems and that chaos.
It was probably fairly quickly when you're migrating and trying to teach people how to use the software. It was a little bit difficult back in the day, more so than now. It's way more evolved from what it was. And it was really good back then. It wasn't that it wasn't good. It was just a little newer to people. Using apps was newer at that time and being able to clock in and such. But, I can't tell you an exact day, but I know I was already thinking, okay, wow, cool. They only had, 39 and a half hours instead of 40. That they always said they had 40 or whatever else. And so when you start adding up pennies and or half hours or 15 minutes or 5 minutes a guy, 5 minutes a guy times 10 days in a pay period times 50 guys, do the math, and your average rate is $20 to $25 an hour to a guy, or 30. That's huge, like huge money. And then put your FICA, FUTA, SUTA, work comp, liability, your tax burden on that. So you start realizing, holy cow, I just saved, I don't remember the number, but let's just, it can add up quick. And even if you saved $1,000 at payroll, Busy's not even near that cost.
Yeah. Yeah. And then if you're doing prevailing wage work or union wages, it's just, I've talked to some people in the
Correct.
Northeast. They have their hourly rate is in the 3 digits, over $100. And
Right.
yeah. So what would you say is your favorite thing about Busybusy?
I like the reporting, the job costing options, being able to pull up things in my hand on the phone and having accessible is probably it, because you just get a lot more accuracy when it's simple and it's easy for your guys to clock in, bam, they're there. They clock in, they're done. They clock out for lunch, they clock back in, clock out. They can see their hours. I can see their hours. You dramatically minimize those callbacks. I'm not gonna tell you that there's never an issue, because it's still human error and employees, and they forget to clock in, or they forgot to clock out. But it's really easy to catch. And you also have 2, 3, 4 other guys in their crew that you can see those issues with. So the accessibility of it is probably the number one item.
Yeah. How would you say your life is different now since you've been using Busybusy?
Well, mostly crazy, because I sit here and think, how the heck did I do it before? And then you think, because you can accomplish so much more because you have this software working for you that's a minimum expense. And you can do more business. I mean, sales of, I don't even know, quadruple, 5 times probably. Yes, I have more people, but yes, we can get more done. And it makes it easier. You can track it easier. all of the above. So it's dramatically changed to where I do think, how did I do that? I think of about a handwritten paper payroll note. And I'm just like, could you even imagine that now? So definitely different.
Good stuff. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to share with us, Ben. Thanks, man.
Sure. Okay. Sounds great.
Right. Isaac Barlow, thanks for taking the time to be on here today. Let's jump right into it. We'll talk about your background and some questions about the problems that you're helping to solve with construction businesses. But let's start with this one. How does measuring results help improve performance in a construction business? Because some people would say measuring results is like Big Brother, it's micromanagement, it's looking over their shoulder. But I read in an interview that you did that you feel like measuring results actually helps improve performance. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, sure. There's the age-old adage that says, what you don't measure, you can't manage.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the main reality behind it is if you don't measure the results, you don't really know where you're winning and where you're losing. I'll give you an example that I see a lot, which is where people say, hey, I used to be making a lot of money and then I grew my company a little bit. And then now I don't make as much money as I used to, even sometimes I'm losing money. And what can happen is if they're not measuring their results, if they're not doing job costing, and some jobs they're making, let's say 20% margin, and on other jobs they're losing 15% margin. So as a company as a whole, they're making around 5% profit. And if they're not quite sure where they're winning, where they're losing, then and they're not measuring their results, then if they grow in the wrong direction, they grow with more jobs that are losing 15%, then they end up losing profit as a company. And so, it just gives you measuring your results gives you the business intelligence you need to make better profitable decisions.
What about measuring results for the individual performance? Somebody who's not a business owner. Have you found that being able to share measurable results with an equipment operator, a project manager, an electrician, have you found that being able to share results with them helps their performance?
Oh yeah, definitely. If you can measure results, if someone can see their results, they almost all will be motivated to do better and to try to, it's a game, it's a competition, especially if you have, A player or even B player level team members. They want to see the results and they want to compete against them. It's almost the single best way to drive that additional performance behavior that you're looking for, is just to measure their results and show them their results. And preferably make it into some sort of game that they can be that they can win, incentives that they can win by just producing greater results.
Yeah. That's what the question that I ask a lot, and I tell people you need to be able to answer for your team, is what does winning look like? And what I found, I've been there. I remember being in roles where I would ask my boss, or what am I supposed to do here? What does winning look like? How do I win? And I didn't really get an answer. And I remember sitting in one big meeting, this all hands meeting, and the big shot from Chicago headquarters came down and shared the vision for the year. And I was like, this is great. And I went to my boss, Jeff, said, all right, what can I do to help that? And he was like, I don't really,
I don't know.
I don't know. Just keep doing a good job. Well, what does that mean? What does doing a good job mean? And he didn't have an answer. So what I found is exactly what you said. You have an A player, they want to win, and they want to know, all right, what does winning look like? And then, am I winning? Am I putting points on the board? And what I found is, in a lot of cases, it's incredibly motivating. And people don't need complicated incentive plans. They don't need bonuses. They're not going to put their hand out when you tell them they're winning. They just want to know that they're winning.
Right.
Yeah.
I love that you expressed it like that, that tell them what does winning look like. I think not setting expectations for your employees is one of the, most sure ways you can get a low performance out of them. If you don't set expectations, if you don't show them what winning looks like, you're setting them up for failure.
Yeah. I think that's a big problem. And I'm curious what your experience has been. It seems like there are some misconceptions or some limiting beliefs around this. What I found is some of the reasons people don't do that is they don't want to set expectations, because then when somebody achieves those expectations, they're afraid they're going to put their hand out and say, all right, well, pay me, or I want a piece of the action, or there's some fears around setting expectations and telling people they're winning. Have you seen anything like that? Like what sort of, how do people need to think differently when it comes to sharing those expectations and telling their team what winning looks like?
I understand. I understand the problem. We've seen it where when people try to set up bonuses, especially if they're not clear, if the expectations aren't clear and the incentive attached to it isn't clear, then it can cause a lot of confusion. But I would say that not setting expectations for your employees, it's like I would rather have a guy talk to me about, how they can participate in some, how I can pay them more money, than have someone basically cost me more money by a low performance. That's one side of the argument. The other side is, if you set it up properly, then you don't have those kind of issues. So, and when I say set up properly, I mean, you're paying someone a wage, whatever that wage is, whatever their compensation is. And you say, look, this is what you're getting paid, and here's what we expect of you. And so that it's understood that winning is achieving that, and that that's what you're being compensated for. And you hope, I hope that they perform well enough that you want to raise them or increase their wages and salary. And of course they hope that too. It doesn't mean it needs to be out of whack or unrealistic, but I guess I think it's a good problem to have employees performing so well that you're wondering if you need to pay them more money.
Yeah, definitely. In that same interview that I mentioned you did a few years ago, you said that in a construction business, quote, it's not the norm to systematize. And I talk a lot about systematizing a business. So if systematizing a business is not the norm, what have you found is the norm?
Unfortunately, chaos is the norm. Okay. So, and I don't know which interview it was, but I know what I normally say, and not being the norm is a bad thing. They should be systematizing their businesses. What we found out is, more than 50% of contractors don't even know whether they're winning or losing on a job costing basis. And what I mean by that is not even down to the task level, but at the job level. Do they know whether they're winning from one job to the next? And systematizing really, it's people learning to start working on their business rather than in their business. And where the problem comes from is typically I'm part of the industry. I grew up in the industry. I am a tradesman. We're typically good at our trade skill set, and we think that trade experience, we're master craftsmen on whatever trade we're in. We think that trade experience is what will win the day for us, and they don't often realize that they need to systematize their business. Like, that is working on their business. They've got to learn that business management and systematizing their business is as important to them, or actually far more important than optimizing their trade skills.
Yeah, I completely agree. I finally started reading Michael Gerber's book, The E-Myth Revisited, a few months ago. And I've had several clients say, oh my gosh, I wish I'd read this 18 years ago. And
wonderful book.
It's so enlightening. And I realized I did the same thing. A little over 20 years ago, I started my business thinking, hey, I'm a good project manager. I can build hospitals and office buildings and really complex projects. I can go run my own business. Surely I can do that. But the business management side, as you said, it's way more important than the actual ability to build. And if you don't strengthen the business management side, you won't have anything to build. That your trade skills just really won't matter. So tell us about your construction business. What type of work did you do, and how did you get started?
So I grew up in the excavation trade. Got started because my brothers were doing it. My dad was in excavation, my brothers were in excavation. Even though I was kind of you might say analytical nerd, it was just kind of the family business. So I got into it right out of high school with my brothers doing excavation, and then literally worked in the trenches, any contractor, of course, knows what that is. When you're doing excavation, we installed sewer lines, water lines, all kinds of underground utilities, mass excavation. So I ended up doing that, and then moved from there into operating machinery, and then into managing projects, and then into managing job sites, and eventually into estimating, and then running my own business. So in doing it, I kind of worked all the different positions, you might say, and got to have a good exposure to how all that works. And it's wonderful. I think construction is wonderful. My hat's off to construction workers everywhere, because I really think they're the salt of the earth. But I will say, I believe construction as it exists today still is organized chaos, and there's a whole lot of opportunity for profit that can be had just by getting it in better systematic order.
Absolutely. I think there's this expectation that things are going to be chaotic. And
Yes.
I've seen this, like, oh, it's construction, so it's going to be chaos. And I guess if that's what you believe to be true, if you believe it has to be that way, that's probably going to be your reality. But I can tell you it doesn't have to be that way. And
Yeah.
It can be pretty smooth and not nearly as exciting as some people make it. So
Yep.
Tell us about the moment that the idea for what became Busybusy software came to you.
Okay. Well, yeah, that actual moment, I even remember it pretty well. But so my whole life growing up in the industry, like I said, I'm a little bit of an analytical nerd, and I've always studied everything we're doing. So as I'm working on construction sites, and I've worked on many construction sites, just like the ones you referenced, with hospitals and mass construction sites. And the bigger the site, sometimes the more chaos that's happening, depending on how it's managed, and many factors. Okay. So in experiencing all these things and just kind of pondering it, it felt like to me that there's just too much chaos and too much of a lack of good networking and good organization in getting these jobs accomplished. And I'm not putting down the industry, because we get stuff done. Eventually we get it done. It's just there's a lot of opportunity, and it's a really unique industry in how so many trades network together to accomplish something. Like you mentioned, a hospital. I mean, you probably got 50 to 100 trades getting a hospital done, and it's fantastic. But there's a lot of chaos, and there's, let's say just in my own trade, in the excavation world, you have all these different aspects of managing a business that you're trying to get on top of. I was having a girl that worked for me. She spent 3 days out of the week just trying to collect time from the field, just trying to make sure she got the time cards in from the field, and then tried to interpret them, and then trying to allocate them to jobs and job costing, which was one of my motivations, was extremely difficult. I had a manager that I hired for equipment maintenance, that his job was not to turn a single wrench, but was just to make sure equipment got maintained. Just because it was costing us, well over $1 million in our company from maintenance neglect every year. So we have all these different chaotic points, and those are just two examples, and there was many others. And as I was driving home one evening, I was just pondering all this, and I thought there's got to be a better way. And then I had this idea come to me, and it came to me literally like, I jokingly say like a vision. It was just like an idea, and then it just kept rolling faster. And I actually pulled my car over to the side of the road, or pulled my truck over, and started writing it down. Like, this is what we got to do. So this whole vision came to me of what I need to do to fix, you might say, the construction industry. And the funny part is, it was a soup to nuts vision. And so today what Busy does is that tiny bit of it, because in it, it's like, well, we have to collect the data. We've got to collect the data to get this done. And the most critical data was the labor job costing data, just because it had the highest variability. And so I started there, and that was an unbelievable rabbit hole to go down.
Yeah, I can empathize. I remember about 10 years ago, I was brought in to run a company, and we had 15 or 20 employees at the time. And payroll was a nightmare, because there was a young guy, kind of an intern named Jeremiah, and he probably spent a solid 20 hours a week just trying to organize timesheets that came in on pieces of paper, texts, Post-it notes, emails in some cases. And it was a nightmare. And I was like, this is ridiculous. We can't get anything done on payday. So that was the first problem that I attacked. And it was a game changer. And we ended up growing that business to about 50 people. And there's no way we could have done it without a timesheet tracking system. So let's talk about Busybusy. What problems does Busybusy solve for contractors these days? What are the main problems that you're solving?
On the high level, okay, like Busybusy is what you make of it, So, and I'm sure you know this. There's the 80-20 rule. 80% of your customers use about 20% of your product. Okay, so I'll start with on the low level, I guess. On low level, it just takes care of your time tracking. It consolidates your time tracking. Each one of your employees can use their own phone to do time tracking, or you can set up where a crew member does the time, or the crew leader does the time tracking for them. Or you can set up where you have a kiosk mode where people can go into the job site trailer or whatever and punch in and punch out. So it has all this variety, just simply to replace your way of time tracking and get that data into the office, So that's like the simplest version of Busybusy. We're just going to collect your time, make sure you're getting accurate time and payroll. The next level is, of course, if you're going to start tagging this time and allocating time to job costing. And that's the important thing. And that seems like a simple thing, but as you know, it can be a little bit complex. And so what we actually focus on, the high level of it, is getting that job site intelligence. And so we looked at the industry and said, okay, what's the most important thing to do? In my opinion, the most important thing to do is what I call the project accounting cycle, which is you estimate a job. And when you estimate the job, you make certain assumptions of labor and material and, in my case, equipment, resources, how long those resources are going to take to accomplish certain tasks. And you do your estimate based on some sort of assumption there of that performance from that labor. This goes back to our first conversation about, just incentivizing performance, right? So we have some assumption. Some mixture of some crew is going to accomplish a certain amount of work in a certain amount of time. And that's how we bid the job. So then the next phase in this accounting cycle, so that's the estimation phase. The next phase is execution. So we execute the job, we get the work done. The third phase is evaluation. Okay. So estimate, execute, evaluate. That evaluation phase is what's often not done. almost never is it done. And it's so critical. It's so critical. And you can't do that evaluation phase if you didn't properly track your time and what you were accomplishing during your execution phase. That's the key is, so you estimate it, you execute it, and then you bring that information back to your estimator and say, okay, did this happen the way I thought it was going to happen? Did this work perform the way I thought it was? Do I need to adjust my estimates last year or next project? Or do I need to work with my crew on finding out why these things aren't getting done in the time frame that I thought they would be done? And so that cycle is what we try to promote. We collect not only the time, but we organize it in a way that makes it simple and easy. We make it easy for the crew leader. Busybusy has supervisor tools that allows the crew leader, there's so many aspects of it where, people clock into the wrong job and the wrong task and all these things. So we give the supervisor the ability to do oversight, to come in at the end of the day and reallocate time. If it's like, not change the employee's time, but reallocate it to try to make sure it's accurate. We give a lot of things that way. And then in addition to that, we help them collect business intelligence from the field, even as far as photos and notes, and do their daily sign-offs for no injury. We just pretty much try to manage that entire job costing allocation focused on the labor, and then produce the data back for the company to evaluate it later. And the companies that do this, okay, the 20% of our customers that use 80% of our product, they get a tremendous amount of value out of it. Easily 100 times what we charge them.
What is one feature of Busybusy that you would just jump up and down on the table and say, more of you guys need to use this? It's incredibly impactful, but very few people are using it.
Yeah, to me, and again, y'all forgive me, I'm an analytical nerd. It is literally tagging your time to the project, just making sure that they're job costing it. There's cooler, funner features like that I would jump up and down and be excited about, like, the collecting photos, progress photos, taking photos of what you're doing and putting it into Busybusy where it tags it according to the job and the project and the task you're working on, and it allows you to come back in and separate them later. That's a fun, fantastic feature. But honestly, getting that daily job costing in, to me, is the most important by far that I would jump up and down. In my opinion, if you don't get that, how are you going to manage a successful business? You've got to have that to manage a successful business.
Yeah, I would agree. And then as far as job site photos would go, I would say that is one that when you need that information,
Yep,
if you don't have it, it's priceless. And
that's right.
When you do, it could be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. So I'll give you an example. I have a client who is dealing with litigation right now. And I asked him, if you could do something different, what would you do differently? He said, I would take more pictures. I would have daily logs, because being able to recreate what was happening every day. This is to be able to take pictures and show this is the job site condition. This is the weather. This is what was going on. This is the equipment that was on the site. Pictures are worth more than 1,000 words. And yeah, I couldn't agree more.
We have a customer that literally did what you're talking about and saved $100,000 because they were taking job site photos, and they were able to win a litigation case that was going to cost them $100,000. But as you bring that up, I focus I focus on the analytics, but Busybusy does exactly what you just said. We do the daily reports. It does log the job. It logs the weather. It collects all the data that you're collecting. So when you have your photos and your notes of what's going on and the time and all the crew members that are on the job site and their safety sign off and all that, Busybusy will consolidate that for you into a daily log. And we do it automatic. So it really is a nice, easy, clean system for collecting all your data from the field and send it to the office.
Yeah. I think another hidden benefit is when it comes to your workers' comp, because if you have a workers' comp audit and you don't have good data, then they'll automatically default to the highest risk classification. But if you have a good time tracking system and you have your classification codes set up properly, you're going to pay the right amount. And so this is, again, just like having pictures of a job site is priceless. Having good documentation of every hour time stamped is something you can't recreate or maybe you can, but it would be incredibly difficult to recreate during an audit of your workers' comp policy.
Yep, it does. It helps you in your audits for sure. It helps you in workers' comp claims. If you have someone that's saying they got injured on the job site, you've got a record of them signing off that they were not injured every day. It helps you with Department of Labor. When you have DOL Department of Labor issues, you can go in and show that your employees signed off for their time every day. It's basically systematizing that portion of your business.
Yeah. And here's what I would tell those of you listening. If you're currently using paper and you don't have some sort of a digital process for tracking hourly employees, you're at risk. You're losing a lot of money on the table. And what you're doing really shouldn't even be an option. It's sort of like if you didn't have an accounting system, that's not an option. Unfortunately, some people try to run a business without an accounting system, without using QuickBooks or something. They try to do it out of a checkbook, but that should not be an option. And if you have hourly employees and you don't have a digital time tracking system, you should get one immediately, because what you're doing is you're at risk, lots of risk, and unnecessarily. So let's talk about the future. Tell us about the future vision of Busybusy. Where are you going? What problems do you want to solve? What's your vision for the company?
Our Busybusy's vision, to change the world, you might say, is we've done all the market study, and we did this in the genesis of Busybusy. Why do we even do this? Okay. The statistics that are out there, and they're still consistent today, and I'm sure you're familiar with them, is about 70% of construction companies fail within 7 years. So 100 people go into business this year, 7 years from now, only 30 of them survive. And you get into the why behind that. And, we've done a lot of that research. You dig down and get into the why. And we kind of touched on this earlier, but, you can't find almost a single failure from someone who just didn't understand their trade skill. In other words, people don't fail because they don't know how to lay brick or they don't know how to do excavation or plumbing or whatever. It's almost entirely failure through a lack of information to make profitable and productive decisions. Okay, that's what they fell from. Insufficient information to make good decisions. And so Busybusy is focused on that information, and we're focused on the mobile data and the mobile job site. So today we're collecting all the data of what happened on your job site, the resources that you've used to get certain things done. The other thing we're doing, and we've released the beginning of these products, is production tracking, so that you can track the progress of what you're accomplishing every day. And really what we're aiming towards is that job site profit and loss on a daily basis, that every single day you can see, okay, here's what my crew accomplished and here's what it cost, and just be able to look at it every day. And our goal is that you can look at your job site, kind of like you look at your stocks, every day you can see if they're up or if they're down, if they're winning, they're losing. And the big deal here is, and you can do that today with Busybusy. You just have to put more effort in. We're trying to get it to the point that it's almost effortless, that you can see it and see what's happening. But as you know, Todd, because you've worked on these massive projects, if you don't know daily, weekly, monthly what's happening, especially when you're on a project that's, let's say, a 6-month job or even longer, it's like being on an airplane or a ship. You might be off only 1 degree in the beginning, but when you get to your destination, you're clear off. And so you can lose a ton of money. But if you can give this daily, weekly, monthly job site progress, so people can see whether they're winning or losing on a regular basis, it allows time for someone to come in and react and act and say, oh, things aren't going well, I need to make a change on my job site. Today that happens, but it usually only happens if things are really bad to the point that they're real obvious. And what we want to do is make it just clear every single day what's happening in your business.
Yeah, I like that. Making small corrections, looking at milestones, seeing where you're at, instead of, oh, wow, we have 2 weeks to finish this project and there's no way we can cram enough people on this job site to get it done in a month.
Yep.
We're screwed. Yeah. Which is usually.
And we've overspent our budget. We don't have any money left. Yeah.
That reminds me of a project I stepped in and took over. It was probably a 9-month long project, already into liquidated damages. Nothing had happened on this project for a few months. Liquidated damages were racking up every day, and the project was maybe 60% complete.
Wow.
And it was bad, and it was bad. But that's what happens when nobody's tracking it. It's like, oh, 1 more day, 1 more week, 1 more month, and oh shit, we've hit the iceberg, and it's too late at that point. Yeah. Great stuff. One question. You mentioned changing the world. How do you plan on changing the world with Busybusy?
We look at this. I mean, if you go back to kind of the core of our vision, like I mentioned earlier, we love construction workers. I love entrepreneurs, business owners, anybody that's brave enough to go out and throw their, put themselves in the ring, you might say, in the arena, and fight and try to establish and build a small business. We love it, and we love them. And I personally think, if you study the statistics, 70% of people in the United States are employed by small business owners. And of course, a massive amount of these are contractors. And so we look at them as really the people on the battlefield of the economy. They're out there producing, they're working, they're hustling, they're trying to get things accomplished. And 70% of them are dying on a regular basis. So our vision, our job is we believe that we'll change the world by empowering construction business owners to be more successful, more profitable. And we believe there's a massive ripple effect from that. So you look at it, this is true of entrepreneurs, but obviously our focus is on the construction industry. You look at people that have a good business, and many of them. If we help people to become more profitable and have more money, what do they do with that money? Well, they typically reinvest it. They grow their business, they hire more people, they buy equipment, they buy tools, whatever the case is. And so, Busy was founded right on the heels of the great recession of 2008. Like we were my vision was in 2007. I started kind of playing with it in 2009, and we got programming by 2011. Anyway, if you remember all the economic stimulus conversation we had back then, and I know we've seen a lot recently, but we believe the best economic stimulus that you can possibly give to the nation is empowering small business owners, and in our case, small construction owners, to be more successful, to have more profitability, and that profitability creates the best economic stimulus that the world can see.
Yeah, I like that. Yep, I agree. That's one of the reasons that we work with, we really work with construction business owners for the same reason, because of that ripple effect.
Yeah.
When we can help a construction business owner eliminate profit bleeds, be more efficient, then that allows them to hire more people. They can provide a great experience, a good place for those people to work. They can provide a good experience for more subcontractors and trade partners, have a good experience for them, help them be more successful, and then ultimately provide more of a better experience for their customers who are currently working for all these other Jake leg contractors who are not providing a good experience, and then have more impact on their community, spend more time with their family, which provides a good impact. So yeah, absolutely. It's like dropping a big rock in a pond, and it has a profound positive ripple effect on everybody. And I like the way you said that the best economic stimulus in the world is to help small businesses be more profitable. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I thought of that because at the time, if you remember, there was a lot of that too big to fail conversation where they're bailing out big businesses.
Yeah.
And yet the small businesses employ 70% of the workforce.
Yeah.
So I understand the desire to help the big businesses so that all those employees don't fail. But what we were experiencing at the time is just a complete ignoring of all the small businesses, which employ 70% of the workforce. And so we see them as the soldiers on the battlefield, and we see ourselves as like the sword and the shield, like we just want to arm them to be more successful and fight that economic fight.
I like that. Well, great stuff. Isaac, if folks want to find out more about what you and your team are up to over at Busybusy, where's the best place to go?
The best place to find us is just on the web or on the App Store, just busybusy.com on the website, or just look up Busybusy on the App Store, either the Apple or Google Play. And those words are combined, so there's no space between them on Busybusy. And I did want to mention one thing for your customers is Busybusy also does a free version that you can use for yourself and your team. You can run your entire company and simply replace paper, all for free, and it's free forever. If that's the first step you want to take, we're happy to have you do it.
Fantastic. Great stuff. So go to busybusy.com. The link will be in the show notes as well. And Isaac, thanks for what you're doing. Thanks for taking the time to be on here, man. This was great.
Absolutely. Thank you, Todd. I appreciate it.